So I wanted to make this video talking about Gizmo from Gremlins today, because personally to me, Gizmo is probably my favorite character that came out of Gremlins, because when I think about the movie Gremlins, the character that comes to mind before anybody else in that movie, besides like Billy and the rest of the Gremlins, I would have to say Gizmo, and Gizmo's the mascot. Gizmo is an iconic character during the 1980s, and I just wanted to spend some time in this video just talking about like how great of a character he is, how lovable he is. Like, he's pretty much like man's best friend, if that makes any sense. And what I mean by that is if you look at the relationship between Billy and Gizmo throughout the film, you could easily tell that Billy cares a lot about Gizmo. He looks at Gizmo as his best friend. He wants to make sure that he's taken care of at all times. And when they're separate from one another, you know, obviously Billy gets upset because he always wants to make sure that Gizmo is safe. And you just look at Gizmo just as a whole as you're watching Gremlins. He's such a lovable character, because I can only imagine if I had Gizmo as a pet, or just having Gizmo as a friend, interacting with him every day, playing instruments like we saw in the movie, and just having a fun time with him watching Rambo, or eating at a certain time so me and him can share a meal together. Like, I can only imagine like how great of an experience that can be with having a friend like Gizmo by your side. And that's one of the things that like I really focus on as I'm watching Gremlins, because obviously I love Gremlins as a whole. It's one of my favorite movies that came out in the 1980s. And I also enjoyed Gremlins 2, the new batch, when that came out as well. But I'm more of a fan of the original movie because I'm a sucker when it comes to origin films of how everything started. But just looking back at like Gremlins as a whole, I always paid attention to Gizmo's journey throughout the series, because when you first get introduced to Gizmo, he's mysterious. You don't know what a Mogwai is. You don't know what a Gizmo is. You learn more about Gizmo as you watch the movie. And when you learn about Gizmo, you find out that he's a Mogwai, and they have 3 rules that you need to follow, which is to not feed them after midnight, keep them away from bright lights, and also make sure that they don't get wet. Now, obviously, Gizmo is self-aware, and he knows not to get wet. He knows not to eat past a certain time. And he also knows, like you guys saw in the movie as well, and Billy was carrying him around his house, he also knew to keep himself away from bright lights, because we know that bright lights kill Gremlins, like we saw in the films before, especially towards the end of the first Gremlins film, when Gizmo pulled the curtain and all those lights came from the outside and just burnt Stripe until there was practically nothing left. So Gizmo is obviously self-aware, he's very smart, but just following him throughout the movie and just seeing the certain struggles that he goes through. Like, you look at Gizmo as like a cute little puppy, very sweet and innocent, just doing his own thing just to keep himself in check. And then you see all these Gremlins, because obviously it's a movie, so you're going to expect some big things to happen throughout the film in order to progress the plot, and also for things to keep your interest level up as you're watching the film. And you see obviously what happens with the Gremlins throughout the film. They get into a lot of shit, they try hurting people, they're eating a whole bunch of junk food and stuff. You just see a lot of chaos with the Gremlins. And then you just look at Gizmo's situation, you look at what he's going through throughout that film. He's, like I said, he's sweet, he's innocent, and you just see these Gremlins torturing him. You see Stripe saying Gizmo caca, and they're practically just treating him like garbage. And you kind of feel for the character, because you're like, holy shit, if I was in that scenario, I would really want to help Gizmo. I would really want to help Gizmo out so he could escape all this mess, so he can be in a safe spot, he can be with Billy, or he can be with somebody that he's close to, so he doesn't have to run into any sort of situation like this again, because those Gremlins are vicious. Like, if you guys sat down and watched the Gremlins movie when it came to the first film and second film, you can tell that those Gremlins are vicious. They do not give a shit at all. They just do whatever the hell they want. I mean, you even saw in the first movie, they were running a movie theater all by themselves. They were causing a lot of destruction there, a lot of problems like we saw with these Gremlin films. They clearly do not give a shit. They just want to do things the way that they want to do, and that's the end of the story when it comes to that sort of thing. So it's like, you look at Gizmo, you're like, damn, dude, like, how do you deal with this? Especially like when he was left alone. Like, that was another thing I was looking at when I was watching the film. I was like, dude, he's left alone and he's dealing with all of these little Gremlins. Like, how could you like put himself through that? Like, you even saw him like scared with all of this different kinds of shit going on, especially like when we first started seeing the Gremlins and how they started off as little Mogwais. but then they turn into these green, nasty creatures that just cause a lot of mischief throughout the films. And you just see him like hiding, and he's like, holy shit, like, when Billy coming home? When am I gonna get out of this situation? Like, I don't know, it's just the way that Gizmo is throughout the film. It just makes you really fall for the character. It just makes you really love who Gizmo is. And then you even see in like the second movie where you had that whole entire movie like based on a mall, because for the most part you just saw a lot of these gremlins roaming around to different spots in that film. And you even saw in that movie, just like how we saw before, that Gizmo is really into Rambo. He thinks Rambo's really dope, and you see him like dressing up as Rambo, and he even creates his own little bow and arrow where he can like fire that fire that he put on the eraser. Can't entirely remember where he put the fire in there, but I remember he like wrote a match of some sorts. I believe he actually made a bow and arrow out of like a little paper clip. But you even saw in that film that like he was so inspired by Rambo, and he himself is like, dude, I am so tired of these freaking gremlins causing all these problems all the time. And you just see him like shooting his arrow at that spider gremlin in that movie, like we saw towards the end of that film. And he was pretty much standing up for himself. It's just one of those situations where it's like, okay, I dealt with you guys all the time. You guys always picking on me. And then when the time came, of course, Gizmo's like, you know what? I got to step up my game. I got to stand up for myself, and I got to take on these creatures so I could put an end to them once and for all. And that's exactly what we saw in that film, when he had the courage to stand up for himself and go up against all these gremlins. So I just wanted to make this video just talking about like how great of a character Gizmo is, like how much of a gem he is, how lovable he is. And he's honestly like, you know, one of the most iconic characters coming out of the 80s. Like when you think of like a cute little furball, the first thing that comes to mind is Gizmo. And on a lot of people nowadays still care about Gizmo, you know, the people that seen the Gremlins film back then, or even the people that are first getting introduced to the Gremlins franchise. A lot of people, when they looked at Gizmo, they're like, oh my god, he's so adorable. Like, can you get me a Mogwai? Like, where can I find these Mogwais? Like, is there any spot that I can find them and have one as my own, to have like as a pet or a best friend? Because that's pretty much what Gizmo is. He's your best friend. You care about him. You want him to be happy. You want to watch all those wholesome moments with him throughout the film. That's just like one of the great things about Gizmo. He's just such a lovable character, and it's hard to dislike a character like that when he's so cute. He's so innocent, like I mentioned before, and then you see him doing his sweet and cute little dance moves in the second Gremlins film. He's just such an amazing character, and it's just really hard, as I said, not to love the character. But other than that, that's honestly all I have to really say in this video. I just wanted to make this little fun video talking about Gizmo and explaining why he's like one of my favorite characters when it comes to different movies that I've seen. So I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Like, do you guys love Gizmo? Do you guys have a favorite moment with Gizmo throughout Gremlins? When you guys saw the Gremlins film, like when it comes to the first film or the second film, just let me know all your thoughts overall in the comment section down below. And of course, if you guys enjoy this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. We are on the road to 200 subscribers, and that's awesome. So I really do thank you guys for all the support. It really does mean a lot. And since we're on the topic of that, be sure to click on that bell for notifications so you guys are notified whenever I upload a new video on the channel, so you don't miss the upload. Make sure to check out my social media when it comes to my Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. That is all located in the description below. But other than that, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, wherever the day may be, if it's daytime, the nighttime, or the evening. And I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, peace out.